Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Kieran from NICE, and we're here with Sean Kelly from Intofilm. And this is a webinar that Sean's going to deliver to us, and it's just detailing the resources that Intofilm have put together for Integrated Education Month. And it's around the theme of bias busters. And as you know, anti-bias in education is central to the integrated ethos and something we hope that all schools aspire to implement throughout everything they do, really, as a core focus within schools. And having looked at the resources, and I hope some of you have been able to already, it's really brilliant what Sean and the team and Nicola have been able to put together for us. So now I'm just looking forward to hearing this. This is the primary webinar, and just for your information, it will be recorded and shared following that. And just one little bit of information as well. I said this last week as well in the post-primary webinar, but in the initial email, I'd said with regards to the Interfilm competition to send us the entries. But if you look in the resource, it specifies to send those to Interfilm using the email address provided, including a small short description of the piece that you're entering. But Sean, if you're ready to present, work
Yeah,
away.
no problem. I'll do the usual. Hopefully, turn if the technology fails me, just let me know. And if you can keep a wee eye on the chat, just in case any questions come in,
Of
just
course.
as we go through. And again, if people got questions, feel free to stop me at any time, or there'll be an opportunity to ask questions. But if something I've said, if either I've said something that's complete nonsense, or you just want to ask something, please feel free to jump in. So see, um, I'll be sharing the wrong screen there. One second. Uh, okay. So come through for you, okay,
Yeah,
Trina?
I can see it. Thanks, Sean.
Great. Well, first of all, thanks very much for inviting me along. So, as Trina said, we've been working on some resources to help support teachers through the whole idea of creating some content and creating some films for Integrated Education Month under the theme of bias busters. But I think sometimes as soon as we mention filmmaking, everyone panics and thinks it can be quite complicated, and you're not really sure where to start. But that's where Interfilm comes in because I'm here essentially just to reassure you that it's not as complicated as you think. It doesn't have to be scary or daunting, and it doesn't have to require any editing or any additional skills. If you can press a button and hold a camera or an iPad, then that's all you need. And today, what we'll do is we'll talk you through some of the resources that we have available for this particular project, let you know about the other support and services you can get from Interfilm. But it's very much just a quick introduction of, oh, think about this, or maybe you could try that idea. What we would definitely encourage you to do is get in contact with us. So my contact details and my colleagues will be available at the end. So if you've got any queries or you'd like us to come out into school to kind of help deliver training for your staff or create help with some workshops for your pupils, again, that's not a problem. That's what we're here for. So um, just before we start, um, just to let you know that Interfilm, in addition to support for Integrated Education Month, we offer lots of other free resources at the moment. So there's over 1,200 free resources on the website. You see some of them across the bottom there, for everything from the recent Wonka films and the Marvels films, the Bias Busters we're working on at the moment, and then other resources are in a 15-minute filmmaking guide. We've got lesson plans and information on how to use sport to discuss equality and diversity. And we've got lots of resources that are free for every teacher. You don't need to run a film club. All you need to do is log on as a teacher with an email address and a password, and you get access to it. In addition to that, we also have a free streaming service. So it's essentially Netflix for schools. If your school would like to stream films directly into the classroom, that is available from Intfilm. And again, our staff here can help you get that set up. And one of the other things we're really proud of is we try and encourage as many young people as possible to have the cinema experience, going to see films in the cinema. Our main festival runs in November, but that's augmented again this year with the spring screenings program. So any teachers who would like to take the entire school out to the cinema to watch something, and there's no cost for that. Tickets are all free. Um, and in some cases, we can provide a bursary to help with some of the travel costs because we understand what it's like for schools at the moment. Trying to get out of schools is difficult enough, but then when you look at the cost of transport, it becomes incredibly prohibitive. So we're sensitive to that and we're trying to help out wherever we can. This and all the other resources and information I'll throw at you will all be available on our website at intfilm.org. And again, if you can't find it there because there's too much stuff, just give us a shout and we can help you out and help you find it all. But I'm going to jump around in this presentation for a second because, like all good technology, Zoom decided to update 10 minutes before this meeting, and I'm using a slightly older presentation. But for the Bias Busters program, um, we sat down at the beginning of this and thought, okay, what's the easiest way to explore bias and have talk about that in film in the classroom? And we're very aware that that can be a very sensitive subject to put together. So, and then how to address that with young people? How do you bring it up in the classroom? And many teachers would feel like, oh, if we're going to talk about bias, then we could be opening a can of worms because we're not really sure what young people will say and how to respond. So we try to give as much support and context there as possible. But essentially, you can get some help with training. So this webinar is just an introduction to what's available. We can provide training for your staff in terms of if it's more in-depth filmmaking training, we can provide that. If it's about how we can use resources, how we can develop stories and ideas for game or for films, we can do all of that. The resources that we provide are all completely free. So in addition to this one, we can come out and talk you through some of our other resources. Workshops, so we can come out into school and help you with support workshops. One thing we can't necessarily do for all schools, as much as we would love to, is to provide a filmmaker to come out and to get involved in that filmmaking process for you, because we are a small team, but we can provide support on how to get started and some information. And although this is a primary focus session today, letting young people know that there are careers in this if they're interested in it. That the film, the games, the technology and screen industries in Northern Ireland are flourishing, and letting your pupils understand that stuff doesn't arrive from a spaceship. It's made by people. Stories are told by people, and essentially what we try and do, particularly this age group, is reassure teachers and young people that almost everything's made up. You know, you can look at Star Wars, you can look at the James Bond, all this stuff. It's all just made up. And it started off as a scribble on the side of a paper or a post-it note. So that reassurance that that's fine. You can make stuff up as long as you've got an idea that you would like to talk about and something they say, we can help you get that message across. And again, in the most technology, simplest technology possible. Okay, so and part of doing that would be our story builder resources. So if teachers aren't familiar with story builder, they are large A3 packs. So they're about 26 pages long. We can provide a printed pack for every pupil in your class. That essentially looks at the whole idea of a story. Who are your characters? Where's your story set? What kind of genre of a story is it? Do you want to tell a scary story? Do you want to tell a funny story? And it's a real strong building block for young people to understand what it is that they would like to say. So if we're talking about a bias, what bias are we trying to unpack? What how we would like to display that on screen. And that's not I'm not sure you can see my camera feed, but there are large packs and they're designed to be worked on over the course of a few weeks. Where young people just hone and refine and develop their ideas, because we know how difficult it is for a teacher to think, yeah, um, let's make a film, and you're inundated with ideas or lots of blank faces staring back at you. So we can go into your school, help you sit down with story builder resources, and plan a story so that when it does come time to make your film, you have a definitive set of shots. You know what you need to get, you know what the storyboard is, and everything's been planned out. And that makes it a lot more accessible for all the pupils in your class. And it means that you're not sitting up worrying the night before thinking, oh God, I promised my class I would have this whole session ready for tomorrow, and we're going to be filming tomorrow, and you don't know you don't know what you need, but we can help with all of that. And one way to when you're looking at an actual story and we're looking at bias, it's to see how other filmmakers have tackled it in the past, and that can be a very very useful way of exploring some different ideas and exploring some issues. And that's why we have a resource called the Film Bus Challenge, and we've got a special edition of that for Bias Busters. So Film Bus Challenge is essentially a collection of 5 short films. They've been curated by our filmmaking team. The longest film we have within there is, I guess, 6 minutes long. So in order to watch all of the Bias Busting films from start to finish, well, can be done in under an hour. And there's support there for each of the films, and they all tackle a different issue each. So it could be neurodiversity, it could be disability, it could be ageism. They all tackle a specific thing. And it's interesting to sit down with a group of students, watch a film that's maybe 4 or 5 minutes long, and then with some of the prompts we've included is, okay, what was that about? What's the filmmaker trying to say? Who were the characters? what was the story, what actually happened. And for teachers that are maybe just not really sure how to approach bias in that sense, it gives a really strong foundation. Um, there's space within the menu sheets that are all included in the downloadable pack for young people to write a review of that film. Not so much in why did we like it or I like this film because this is my best film ever. It's not that. It's more to think about the characters, what situation did they find themselves in, what challenge was being discussed, and how were those choices made on screen. Um, and for every young person that does that, there'll be a certificate attached to the back of the pack. That is an editable PDF, so you just open it up, type the child's name on it, and that can be printed out so they get the recognition that they've taken some time to think about bias. Lots of schools either set aside an afternoon to explore this in preparation for developing their own story ideas, or other schools will take one a week over the course of a few weeks, so they can build up to it and they'll have a theme for the week. And if there are particular biases that you're interested in that aren't included in this pack, if you get in touch with us, we can come back and let you know what other films we have available. But the films in this particular collection have been chosen specifically because because they're short, and B, because they're accessible for your chosen age group. And they are all available on our Vimeo channel in addition to our streaming service. So even if you are looking at these from home, you can watch them at home, and even there's no restriction on the links that you can see here. Um, and what I'm going to do now is actually going to show you about a minute or so from one of the films that we've chosen for Primary Bias Busters, and this is called Louis' Shoes. It's a beautiful film that depicts neurodiversity from the young person's perspective. It also challenges us an additional bias because it's French and it's got subtitles, and we've got lots of people think, "Oh, I can't, I'm not going to watch the film with subtitles. It's too much work." But you'll see in a second, for the next minute or so, that what Louis' Shoes is like and how you could apply that in the classroom.
Ça, c'est ma nouvelle école. Et avec l'aide de ma maîtresse, je veux me présenter. Je m'appelle Louis, j'ai 8 ans et demi. J'adore mes chaussures bleues, taille 33, avec strac, parce que je ne sais pas faire mes lacets. Avant de faire quoi que ce soit, je lève toujours mes chaussures et je les pose bien parallèles à côté de moi. Grâce à cela, elles s'abîment 1,6 fois moins vite. Mais surtout, elles sont toujours là pour me remettre sur pied. Enfin, c'est ce que je croyais. Je change pas de chaussures. Dans mon ancienne école, je portais déjà mes chaussures bleues. J'aime quand c'est carré. Quand ça ne l'est pas, je suis perdue. Par exemple, je n'ai jamais saisi pourquoi les gens dansent pour dire bonjour, ni pourquoi il faut les regarder dans les yeux. Cela n'a vraiment pas de sens. Un bonjour suffit.
Okay. I'm just going to stop it there because it's a beautiful film, and I always get sucked in every time we watch this. I think last week we did the post primary session, and we do have an additional 5 films for post primary. So again, all suitable for maybe an older group in primary schools. 5 primary school films, 5 post primary films, which you can watch in your own time. Again, they don't take a long time to watch. If you're interested in the Film Buff Challenge side of things, we then also have 2 additional sets of short films, 10 each, 10 for primary and 10 for secondary, if you'd like to go on and explore that in more detail. And it is a really good way of getting your young people inspired about what story they like to tell and how other people approach it in the first place. So that's the Film Buff Challenge, and that will get all downloadable. All the resources and links to the films are all available in the packs. Great. So in addition to that, we have a lot of training available for teachers, and we know how how little time teachers have. We know how much work it takes to run a classroom, and we know that even though it's the end of January, we're already got our eyes set on half term just to try and get a break and catch your breath after Christmas. So all of our training and all the packages we provide online are very, very short. So our one of our longest courses, you see it listed here, is Animate with Aardman. So those of you who aren't familiar, Aardman are the studio who make Wallace and Gromit, Shaun the Sheep. That is training specifically for teachers, but includes videos and content that you can show in class for your young people. That entire package is 1 hour long. So, and that includes all of the resources, all of the download, the video content. It's just 1 hour long. And we have other resources that are quite good in terms of visualizing stories. If you've got young people who find it difficult to kind of articulate what it is they're trying to say, our visualizing stories training in just 30 minutes. So it's kind of if you plan ahead and factor in 30 minutes at some point of the next few weeks, there's lots of content that is available and lots of ideas so you can get that in your classroom. That's part of a collection of over 20 free training resources. Now, within those training resources, they are broken down into individual models or modules. So some modules could be 5 or 6 minutes long. That our ethos is that a teacher who's got either 5 minutes in the beginning of the day or 10 minutes at the end of the day can just log on and quickly find a realistic and practical way of developing filmmaking in the classroom. So it's not, our whole ethos is to make sure that it's as simple and user-friendly as possible. We don't want teachers to be at home worried the night before they're going to try and make a film or concerned about how do we do this or how do we, I don't know how to edit. I don't know the particular software. It's trying to get you over all of those barriers. So in terms of actually thinking about making a film, the easiest thing to do to make a film is to literally pick up the camera, point it, and press record. And I know that seems quite simple and straightforward, but that is filmmaking in its simplest form. It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be doesn't have to have lots of sophisticated edits or camera movements or special effects. It literally just if you can have a good idea that is usually honed through our story builder resources, and that could be something as simple as a young person walking down a corridor in school. So if they were in school or on the street, if you imagine that the camera is either someone's following them with the camera just over the shoulder, and that's recording the things that people say to the child that's on camera or reactions that they get because they're perceived to be one thing or another. That can be very powerful as a film. Likewise, if the young person who's walking down holds the camera at eye level, it will give us a point of view shot so that the audience is seeing the world from the perspective of that young person. It's a very powerful technique, but it's a very simple technique. And what can be quite interesting as well is you've got some other young people coming, being filmed from the other direction. So essentially, you would stage the same thing twice. So you can have children at one end of the corridor, we film them walking one way, and then children from the other end of the corridor walking back the other way. And if you like to go further into it, you can then add some narration or dialogue so you can hear what young people are thinking in their heads. But again, that type of filmmaking requires no editing whatsoever. It's just an iPad or phone. And it's essentially whatever equipment you have. Usually there's no need to go out and get additional equipment or borrow equipment. If you've got access to something that can record and play an image back, that's all you need. And it's a really good way for young people to present their understanding of a particular topic. In terms of integrated education, for example, it could be a young person traveling to a different school for one period, or it could be a young person who's recently arrived from another country and recording their experiences. So that is the whole idea of shoot and screen. I'm just going to show you now some of the when we talk about filmmaking, it can be quite easy to get lost in a lot of the technicality. I'm going to show you a short video now which explains just the different types of camera shots and when we would use them, because there's a lot of power in understanding the names for things. And we're big advocates of young people either getting a piece of paper and cutting a hole the size of a postcard out of a sheet of paper, or just make a small frame with their fingers. But it's that idea of trying to visualize what will be on screen. Just asking a young person, just how will this image be presented? And that's where camera shots come into it. So like play this video and we can talk about that in a sec.
Films are made up of sequences of shots. A shot begins when the camera starts rolling, action, and ends at the moment it stops, cut. When planning your project, you'll need to think about the different shots you'd like to use. A wide shot is also known as an extreme long or establishing shot. It lets you see where the film is set. This immediately shows your audience where and when the action is happening, so it may be helpful to use one near the beginning of a scene. A long shot shows a character's whole body. It's a great way to show your character's relationship to their surroundings so that the audience can gather clues from their body language and costumes. A medium long shot shows a person from the top of their legs to the top of their head. This helps the audience feel like they're part of the action. They can see how characters are feeling and connect with the setting. A mid shot only shows the character from the waist up. This combines the effect of facial expressions with body language and gestures. It's often used for dialogue between characters. A close-up frames a character's head and shoulders. Use a close-up to make it easy for the viewer to read the actor's facial expressions and see small details. When an object, item, or body part fills the entire screen, this is called an extreme close-up. The audience pays attention because there's only one thing to look at. Use this to heighten emotions or show that an object is important. Think carefully about how and when to use these shots. Choosing the right shots for your project will make your film more exciting and help you tell your story. Including them in your storyboard will also save you time when you begin acting and filming.
So that is the concept of shots. And what we find is we have a resource called Shot Size Bingo, which is quite helpful if you're going to combine that with the Film Loss Challenge, and it's asking young people to identify, okay, what's the establishing shot? What is the mid shot? Can they find those shots within that short 4-minute film? So, for example, if we were to go back and look at Louis' shoes, the idea of we know straight away that it's in a school, and that's the establishing shot. If you watch the whole film, you'll see a close up of Louis' shoes. That's an extreme close up because the shoes are what we're focusing on. So again, it's giving young people the visual language to understand what's happening on screen, but then the actual words to describe that to other people, if that makes sense. So it's and it's just those 6 terms. So we'll cover them in a bit more detail. But and again, workshops, training, all the information is available for this. And I know we're flying through it because we don't have a lot of time on these webinars. But the use of camera shots is quite powerful for young people. And obviously it depends on the bias that you're exploring. And it could be anything within your class. But if it was something like Louis' shoes, the shoes are the thing that's most important to him. So that would take an extreme close-up of the shoes. We would probably start with an establishing shot of the outside of your school, or if your story set in a supermarket, it would be the outside of a supermarket. That way, the audience knows, okay, we're in a supermarket. So when they cut to whatever happens on the inside, they understand that. If it was a case of there was a bias between 2 sets of young people because one person would like one particular bag of sweets and another young person has a bias towards a different bag of sweets, you can have an extreme close-up of both those bags of sweets. So you can, and then that will cut to a young person's reaction. So it's just being creative. If you would like to use more than one shot, being creative with how those shots work. But those 6 are the main shots that you would use. And there are also some things just to talk about in terms of the practicality for filmmaking. If again, depending on what resources you have in the classroom, if you've got an iPad, for example, it's always better to record all of your footage on the same iPad, because I'm sure for those teachers that are fortunate to have 2 or 3 iPads, having bits and pieces of footage on a few different devices can be quite challenging because you have to get all of them, take the information off them, get all that information saved onto one, either computer or another iPad for the editing process. Whereas if you use the same device, it means that way you know at least all of your content is saved. If we give young people a device like a phone or a tablet now, there is there's a tendency for them to film it in portrait mode. So if those people don't aren't aware of portrait mode, it's literally straight up and down because a lot of social media will be it's filmed in that format. It's a totally legitimate format to film in. Whereas traditionally, a lot of people turn the iPad or the camera on the side to give a more TV or film like landscape approach. Both are totally fine in terms of how they're used. The only piece of advice we would give you is make sure you've decided that beforehand because you don't want to have some shots that are filmed in portrait, other shots that are filmed in landscape because that does your actual film then will jump around it and audiences can be confused. Um, it is funny when there's definitely an age gap when if we're working with young people who are older than 16, they would tend to do it in landscape. Anyone under that age is automatically thinking about Snapchat or TikTok and they film it in a vertical portrait style. But again, either are fine as long as you decide and stick with one or the other. That said, if I was to give you the advice in terms of being biased, if imagine you're going to be screening this for an audience on a big screen or it's going to be in the cinema, if you're thinking about that, then landscape always looks better on the cinema because you get benefit of the full screen. So camera positioning is again something that seems really simple, but it can be it can make all the difference to your shoot. It's understanding where in the room will you get the best shot. It could be thinking about are we obstructed by a glass window in our door, or the other people could be walking down the corridor and maybe distract the viewers. Do we have direct sunlight that's coming into the room that is going to change the light in the room, or do we need to move things out of the way? If you're filming in a room whereby it's all white walls, is there something that's slightly more colorful or slightly more interesting if we just turn the camera slightly? So don't be afraid to rearrange your space and position your camera in the space to get a good shot. And also don't be afraid to do interesting things with your camera. You see lots of people now, I think it's a bit of a trend on TikTok. People put a camera inside the fridge, then they'll open the fridge and they get a shot from inside the fridge. If you're trying to get an interesting camera angle, it's okay to have your camera attached to a stick and put it in the top of the corner. It's okay to sit it on a shelf, get some sellotape, stick it to the wall if that's what you need to gain the shot. Just have a think about where the camera is going to be. Can be quite important. And then camera framing, it's once you have looked at an activity with your young people with the Film Off Challenge, for example, just picking one of those films and then thinking about, okay, we're going to make this shot. The character is going to, what we want the audience to understand is the character here is sad. So for that, you would use it. The closer you come to someone's face, the more you can communicate that message, the more your actor will be portrayed on screen. So the closer you get, the more feeling you tend to get from character. So it's understanding that with your students and asking them to think about that themselves. Okay, in this scene, we would like to just show that someone is walking from the car park into the supermarket. That a close-up's not probably going to be the best idea for that one, but it's asking young people's opinions. What do you think, and why would we do it that way? It's just again giving them as much creative control as possible. Lighting again is really important. If it's a dark, well, it's January. It's going to be January, February. It's probably going to be a dark day, and it's going to be just consider the lighting. First thing to do is if you're in class, switch on all the lights. So you can't have enough lighting when you're inside. Switch on all the lights if possible. If it's a particularly gloomy part of the room, move a desk lamp or have another phone that's got a flash on it, and you can just hold that off to the side of the camera to help illuminate your actors' faces. The other thing to be very mindful of is if we're lucky enough to have a sunny day, just be very careful of where the camera is. If the camera is facing towards the sun, you will get a lens flare and it will make everything else in the image look very washed out. So if you've got young people who are facing or filming on a sunny day, make sure their back is to the sun. So the sun should be shining on the back of the camera person's head. That way you know the camera's got a clear view and everything in front of the camera has been illuminated as well as possible. So it's and lighting does make such a big difference when you're trying to make a film. It's also a nice exercise for young people to kind of move around with the camera. So if you've got space in the corner of your classroom, or if it's in the corridor, move around and see how the light looks from either side and have some dress rehearsals and work through. And bearing in mind, sometimes, particularly if you're filming outside, the light does change. So it's maybe worth having it doing 2 or 3 takes at a time because the lighting does change. It's as you know what it's like here. One day it could be at 9:10, it can be nice and sunny. By 9:30, it's snowing. So just be aware that the light does change throughout the day. Um, and then sound again. I've never been to a nice quiet school ever. There's always noise in school, whether it's in your classroom or it's the bell or to another class they're doing an activity outside. So it's just trying to be aware of the space that you have, and whatever space you have is fine, by the way. And the same as lighting, whatever you have is the best thing to use. Don't be feeling that you have to send the entire school home so you can get a quiet space, but just be aware of the background noise and how that works. Most devices you use will have the microphone already attached to the device itself. So if you are of school that does have lots of equipment, maybe you'll have an additional microphone that you can add in the scene. But 9 times out of 10, most people have the mic attached to the camera itself, and that is totally fine. But one thing we would always suggest is if you're outside, for example, in the playground, or if, as I mentioned, if your story is taking place in the supermarket, record some audio that's there in the background as well. So some of the background noise of the supermarket, which will be the hum of the tills, the noise of some trolleys, packaging, or if it's outside, some of the background noise, and that doesn't have to sync up exactly with your video, but it means if you do have a disaster when it comes to sound, and you've taken 12 kids to the local ASTA and you've been making a wonderful recording, but you get back and you realize that the sound isn't good enough, then you can always add that in, and what's called ADR. So it's a additional dialogue recording. So young people can add their lines back in, but it always helps to have that bed of sound from where you were on the original shoot. So again, if you were at a beach, for example, the sound of the waves, the wind, seagulls, that type of stuff is really useful. And it means that you don't have to then get everyone back to that location again if the sound hasn't worked. But even if it does, there are ways to get around it. There are access to sound effect libraries, and we can always help you find that type of stuff. But it's always just a good idea. And it's, again, if you've got more than one pupil, some people can be responsible for the sound and making sure that has all been checked out. And if you have a tripod, so not everyone will have a tripod, and that's fine. We have resources that we can share on our website for how to make a tripod from cardboard that just sits on the desk, and you can rest your phone, your iPad, the camera, whatever it is, on that tripod. All we're trying to do is minimize the actual shake in the camera. So if you don't have one, it's important to tell your camera person to try and keep their arms as close to their body as possible. So that if their arms are out wide and you're holding an iPad from both sides, it can shake up and down quite a bit. And some software will flatten out some of that shake, but not all of it. It's also fine to sellotape an iPad or a camera to the wall. It's if you're trying to get an interesting shot. We've had lots of success with young people sitting in the teacher's chair or a swivel chair and then being pushed along. So to kind of get the camera to move as smoothly as possible. And it's just one of those things when you watch it back, camera shake, it can be quite distracting for an audience member. And what you want them to do is to focus on the quality of your film and the story that you already have. So that is the most important thing. But again, if you don't have one, don't let that stop you. It's just there are simple techniques to try and keep the camera as stationary as possible. And if you've got all of that done and you've got your film put together and edited, the most important thing is finding an audience. So your pupils will love the process, and hopefully you've made something that you'll be incredibly proud of. And even if you're not proud of it when you're finished, it's probably much better than you think, because you'll be your own harshest critic. And we see films from schools up and down the country on a weekly basis, and some of them are incredible. And even those that are maybe not so technologically or kind of accomplished, and that people haven't put all the bells and whistles and special effects on it, sometimes they're even more genuine. The stories that young people can tell, and the idea is the most important thing. The idea that a young person has and how it gets communicated is fine. Everything else is additional. So in order to celebrate the work of young filmmakers, we have the Interfilm Awards. So we have there's a rolling Film of the Month competition that stays open all the time within the film, and teachers and young people can submit their films to the Interfilm Awards. The best films of the year are then selected and shortlisted. Our awards this year take place at the end of June, so a nice way to round out the school year. They are in the Odeon in Leicester Square. So anytime you see a nice big, a nice big shiny premiere, it's usually the Odeon in Leicester Square, and we do exactly the same thing. People come along. There's full red carpets. There's celebrities. There's goodie bags. There's people getting photographs with paparazzi and stuff, and it's an opportunity for young people to be reminded that the stories that they can tell and the ideas that they have are valid and are important. I'll show you a video now of the awards from last year to give you an idea of what you could be getting involved in this year.
I'm gonna cry. I'm not joking. I'm gonna cry. We literally have the future of film in this room, and I'm glad that Interfilm have recognised that it's important that young people get this support. So I'm glad they're here, and I'm glad that they're celebrated, and I hope they are encouraged by today.
To do anything like this and encourage kids to get involved in such fantastic industries as film is wonderful. And the films that some of them have made, they're too good.
These kids have basically marshalled each other and marshalled themselves into just creating in some of the hardest periods of time in our social history, during lockdown, and yet they were motivated to make this amazing stuff, amazing content.
And the most important thing for me, especially being a teacher, is we actually don't realise what they're capable of. So when we come together and all of their work's been celebrated, it's just very heartwarming and moving for me.
I would like to thank Shauna, Paul, and Nick at Edinburgh Youth Theatre, who introduced me to filmmaking during lockdown. It's been the best thing ever.
I'm dedicating this to all my pupils and all the children that have been my film club members over the years. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for Interfilm, for giving young filmmakers a platform like this to show their films to a wider audience. We hope that winning this award will open the door for more girls of colour to participate in film and seek a career in film industry. Thank you. It's a really, really big moment for us, and it's just amazing to be the women that make this for the young girls, hopefully. And it really just showed that if you do work hard for something, then it will come out at the end. You will get what you want.
Everyone here is someone who's just given it a go and taken that opportunity or taken that first step. And I think often that first step can be the scariest part. But some of the people who took that first step are now here in Leicester Square receiving awards with celebrities, and that could be you. So why not give it a go?
We want to hear from you and we want to support you, and we're getting on now, so we need that younger crowd to come through.
No matter your age, your background, anything that comes with you or comes around you, you are meant to be in this room, you're meant to be in this space, and you're clearly meant to be celebrated. So thank you and congratulations. Thank you.
Okay, so that's the Interfilm Awards, and I think we've had about 7 or 8 different award ceremonies over the last few years. And if you're thinking that, I'm in a small rural primary school in Northern Ireland, that's never going to happen. We're not going to be on the red carpet in London. We've had numerous schools, almost every year we've had schools from Northern Ireland flying over to bring their pupils, teachers in tuxedos, teachers with brand new frocks on, and kids in tuxedos all showing up. And it's an incredible validation of the work that goes on in schools, but also the fact that young people have a voice, they have an opinion, and the fact that they've taken the time to put something on camera. And it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be sophisticated. It's just, as he said in that image or that video, it's just taking the first steps, just trying something and coming up with an idea. And if we can try and capture bias in a way that is on screen, you'll know when you see some of those Film Bus Challenge films that we talked about. If you don't cry, then you're a lot harder than I am, because I consider myself to be quite cold on the inside, but I still cry at most of them. But it's just about the idea and how young people can communicate their hopes or their aspirations, their ideas can be very powerful. In addition to the awards themselves, just for the Bias Busters itself, we have additional prizes. So we've got a first prize of £100 Amazon voucher for the class. We've got runners-up prizes of £50 Amazon vouchers, and then we've got a few green screens and pieces of filmmaking equipment that we can make available for other teachers for their entries. But again, I can't stress enough that we're here to help. If you've got any questions, please come and speak to us. And these are all just about making a start. It's all about taking that first step, pressing record for the first time. And if it's a disaster, that's fine. You just press record again. So just convince all of your students that this is something worth giving a go, and practically everything you're going to go and see in the cinema is already made up. So, just making up something else is the easiest thing in the world if you just sit down and we'll help you through it. So, does anyone have any questions? I know that's a whistle stop tour. So I can't see the chat, but just in case there aren't any questions, that's fine. But so my email address is there, and my colleagues Nicola and Neve also available on screen. If you like any support with the workshops that we can provide in terms of developing your story and coming up with your story ideas, we're more than happy to come out and deliver those. Likewise, we can provide story builder packs. We can provide one for every pupil, and we can provide workshops where we can come out and help deliver that for an hour or so in your class to get kids started on developing their own ideas. And as an educator, if you'd like to access any of our additional training, again, everything that you see on here and we provided in development is all completely free. So as an educator, if you've got any queries, please do let us know. And my last final plug before I go is, if you are an educator who's also interested in games, we've been developing lots more resources around the support and use of games in the classroom. So if you've got teachers or pupils who'll be looking at developing their own ideas for games or would like to get involved in games reviews to help literacy, again, please do get in touch. But any questions, that's my email address. And I look forward to seeing the films that you make, and I just hope you have a good time in the process. I'll hand you back to Tiernan now.
Thank you very much, Sean. And just to finish, that was such a great presentation, and I hope that the teachers here and then the teachers who watch this after the fact find it beneficial. And I think what you were saying about, how do you really talk about bias to children? Teachers always say it can be a tricky thing to do, and there's always that need for resources to achieve that. And this is such a valuable way of doing so through, a creative medium and through the arts, and just really excited to see what schools come out with. So thank you again.